The shank pressed against Agent Derek Chen's throat was cold, sharp, and held by a hand that had killed before. Blood trickled down his neck, not from the blade yet, but from the cut above his eye where Hector Ramirez had hit him with a metal tray. The prison cafeteria had erupted into chaos, but in this corner, pressed against the wall, there was only silence and the weight of a secret that was about to get him killed. FBI? Hector whispered, his breath hot against Derek's face. You're a fucking cop. Around them, the riot raged. Inmates battled guards in a storm of rage that had been building for months. Tables overturned, windows shattered, the sound of batons against flesh screams the wail of alarms. But Derek could only focus on Hector's eyes. Dark, furious, betrayed. Hector, listen to me. 3 months. Hector's voice cracked with fury. 3 months you sat in my cell. 3 months you ate my food, told me about your fake daughter, your fake life. 3 months I trusted you, and you're a fucking rat. The shank pressed harder. Derek felt the skin break. Hector, please. Rat. Hector screamed, and 50 pairs of eyes turned toward them through the chaos. 50 inmates who now knew that Derek Chen, inmate 9238847, the quiet guy doing 7 years for armed robbery, was actually Special Agent Derek Chen of the FBI. And in Blackwater Federal Penitentiary, there was no worse crime than being a snitch. If this story has you on the edge of your seat, subscribe to Behind Bars Tales for more intense, true stories from inside America's prison system. Hit that subscribe button now. 6 months earlier, Derek Chen had sat in a conference room at FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C., listening to his supervisor outline what would become the most dangerous assignment of his career. Blackwater Federal Penitentiary, Special Agent in Charge Victoria Nash said, pulling up photos on the screen. 7 correctional officers murdered in the past 18 months. Not injured. Murdered. Stabbed, beaten, one found hanged in a supply closet. Local investigations went nowhere. The guards are scared. The warden is overwhelmed. And we have reason to believe there's a coordinated effort, possibly gang-related, to take complete control of the facility from the inside. Derek studied the photos of the dead guards. Young men and women who'd gone to work one day and never came home. What's the plan? Deep cover. You go in as an inmate. Federal crime, sealed records, all documentation authentic. You'll serve real time, follow real prison protocols. Your mission is to identify the leadership behind these killings and gather evidence we can use to prosecute. How long? However long it takes. Could be months. Could be a year. Derek was 34, single, no kids. He'd been with the Bureau for 8 years, working organized crime. He was trained for this, but training and living it were 2 different things. What's my cover? Derek Chen. Armed robbery, 7-year sentence. You're a first-time offender, scared, trying to keep your head down. The perfect profile for someone who'll observe without drawing attention. And if I'm compromised, Victoria's face was grave. You call for extraction immediately, because if those inmates find out you're FBI, you're dead. They won't wait for questions. They won't hesitate. You'll be killed within hours, maybe minutes. Derek nodded slowly. When do I start? 2 weeks. You'll need to learn everything about your cover identity. Memorize it, live it, become it. Because the moment you walk through those gates, Derek Chen, the FBI agent, ceases to exist. The first night in Blackwater was the longest of Derek's life. He'd been processed like any other inmate, stripped, searched, documented, dressed in the orange jumpsuit that marked him as property of the federal prison system. The cell he was assigned to was 8 by 10 feet, concrete and steel, shared with a man named Hector Ramirez. Hector was 42, muscular, covered in tattoos that told the story of a life spent between prison and the streets. He was serving 20 years for drug trafficking and had been at Blackwater for 6 years. When Derek walked in, Hector had been doing push-ups, his body moving with the mechanical precision of someone who'd done 10,000 reps in this same spot. You the new guy, Hector said, not a question. He stood, sizing Derek up. You look scared. I am, Derek said, and it wasn't entirely an act. Even with his training, even knowing backup existed somewhere outside these walls, the reality of being locked in a cell with a violent offender was terrifying. Hector laughed, but not unkindly. Smart. Fear keeps you alive in here. What'd you do? Armed robbery. Convenience store. I was desperate, needed money, made a stupid choice. The cover story rolled off Derek's tongue, rehearsed 100 times. First time? Yes. You're gonna learn fast then. Hector pointed to the bottom bunk. That's yours. Don't touch my stuff. Don't ask me questions about my case, and don't ever snitch on anyone for anything. You do that, you'll be okay. Don't snitch. The words hung in the air like a commandment. Derek was literally a professional snitch, and here was the first rule of survival. Got it, he said. Over the next few weeks, Derek settled into the rhythm of prison life. Morning count at 6 a.m., breakfast in the cafeteria, work detail in the prison laundry, lunch, yard time, dinner, evening count, lockdown, repeat. Every day the same, every day a test of his cover. He observed everything, the guard rotations, the inmate hierarchies, the gang affiliations that divided the prison into territories as real as any map. The Aryan Brotherhood controlled the North Wing. The Mexican Mafia held the East. The Black Guerrilla family commanded the West. And in the center, various independent crews fought for scraps of influence. Hector was respected across all groups. He wasn't in a gang, but he'd been down long enough to have earned a reputation. People came to him for advice, for mediation, for help, and slowly, carefully, Derek became his friend. It started small. Derek would make Hector's bed when he was sick, share his commissary when Hector ran out, listen when Hector talked about his daughter, Isabella, who was 17 and growing up without her father. Derek told stories about his own fictional daughter, a composite of details from his real niece, and watched Hector's face soften with recognition of their shared pain. "It's the worst part," Hector said one night, lying on his bunk in the darkness. "Missing her grow up. Missing her first date, her graduation, all of it. When I get out, she'll be 37. I'll have missed her entire life." "I know," Derek said quietly, and in that moment he felt genuinely sad for this man. Yes, Hector had committed crimes. Yes, he was serving a just sentence. But he was also a father torn from his child, a human being suffering in ways the system never acknowledged. That was when Derek started to realize this assignment was more complicated than he'd expected. 3 months into his incarceration, Derek had identified several suspects in the guard murders. There was Ramon Flaco Jimenez, a shot caller for the Mexican Mafia who bragged about handling problems. There was Marcus Smith, a Black Guerrilla family member who'd been overheard making threats. There was even Officer Bradley Wilson, a corrupt guard who Derek suspected might be involved. But he had no proof, nothing concrete, just observations and rumors. Then came the incident that changed everything. Officer Sarah Martinez was a 30-year-old mother of 2 who worked the evening shift in C Block. She was tough but fair, the kind of guard who treated inmates like human beings while maintaining discipline. Derek had watched her break up fights, counsel troubled inmates, even help an older prisoner get his medication when the system failed him. On a Tuesday night in March, Sarah Martinez didn't come home from work. They found her body in the prison greenhouse the next morning, stabbed 17 times. The murder weapon was never recovered. No witnesses came forward. The investigation stalled within days. Derek attended the prison memorial service, watching as inmates and guards alike struggled with the horror of what had happened. Some inmates looked scared, others looked satisfied, and Derek knew that somewhere in this room was a killer who thought he could murder with impunity. That night, Derek used the contraband phone he'd secured through a friendly inmate to call his handler. "Nash," his supervisor answered. "It's me," Derek said quietly, huddled in a bathroom stall during the 5 minutes he had before count. "They killed another guard, Sarah Martinez. I'm close to identifying the leadership, but I need more time." "How much time?" "I don't know. Maybe a month, maybe 3. But I'm building trust. Hector's introducing me to people. I'm getting closer to the inner circle." "Derek, we're under pressure to shut this down. The director wants results." "I know, but if we move too soon, we get nothing. These people are careful. They've avoided prosecution for 18 months. We need ironclad evidence." Victoria sighed. "You've got 6 more weeks, then we're pulling you out, ready or not." "Understood." Derek hung up and returned to his cell, where Hector was reading a letter from Isabella. He looked up when Derek entered. "You okay, man? You look stressed." "Just thinking about Martinez," Derek said. "She seemed like a good person." Hector's face darkened. "She was. Didn't deserve what happened to her." "You know who did it?" Hector gave him a sharp look. "Why you asking questions like that? You know the rules." "I'm not trying to snitch. I don't understand how someone could do that. Kill her like that." "This place makes people into monsters," Hector said quietly. "You spend enough years in a cage, you forget how to be human. You forget that guards have families, have lives. They just become the enemy. And once someone's the enemy, killing them doesn't feel like murder anymore. It feels like war. But it is murder." "Yeah," Hector agreed. "It is." Derek wanted to push further, to ask who was ordering these killings, who was leading this campaign of violence, but he couldn't, not without raising suspicion. So he waited. The breakthrough came 4 weeks later during a conversation in the yard. Derek had been cultivating a relationship with Antonio Big Tony Valdez, a high-ranking member of the Mexican mafia. Tony was 53, serving life without parole for multiple murders. He was smart, careful, and according to Derek's intelligence, possibly the architect of the guard killings. They were playing dominoes in the yard when Tony said, "You're a smart guy, Chen. Quiet, observant. You notice things." "I try to stay out of trouble," Derek replied. "Hector speaks well of you, says you're solid, trustworthy." Derek's heart rate increased, but he kept his face neutral. "Hector's a good friend. How would you feel about doing some work for me?" Tony asked. "Nothing illegal, just observations, information. There are things happening in this prison that require coordination, communication. I need people I can trust to carry messages." This was it, the invitation into the inner circle. Derek knew he should be excited. This was why he was here. But all he felt was sick. Because accepting meant deepening his lies, betraying people like Hector who'd shown him genuine kindness. "What kind of information?" Derek asked. "Guard schedules, security weaknesses, new inmates who might be problems, that kind of thing." Tony smiled. "You help me, I help you. Your time here gets easier. You get protection, respect, and when you get out, you'll have friends on the outside who remember what you did." Derek pretended to consider this. "Let me think about it." "Don't think too long," Tony said. "Opportunities like this don't come around often." That night, Derek made another call to Victoria. "I'm in," he told her. "Tony Valdez just recruited me. I'm going to get the evidence we need. Be careful, Derek. These people have killed 8 guards. They won't hesitate to kill you." "I know." Over the next 2 weeks, Derek became Tony's eyes and ears. He memorized guard schedules. He noted which officers were lenient, which were strict, which could be bribed. He delivered coded messages between Tony and other gang members. And slowly, carefully, he documented everything. Names, dates, conversations, plans. He learned that the guard killings weren't random. They were strategic. Each guard had refused to cooperate with Tony's operation. A massive smuggling ring that brought drugs, phones, and weapons into the prison. The guards who died were the ones who couldn't be bought or intimidated. They were murdered as examples. Derek recorded everything in a tiny notebook he hid in the spine of a Bible, using a code only FBI cryptanalysts could read. Every piece of evidence was building toward the case that would finally bring justice for the murdered guards. But the deeper he went, the more complicated it became. Hector had no idea what Derek was doing. He still saw Derek as his friend, his cellmate, the guy who listened to his stories about Isabella and shared his own struggles. They bonded over their daughters, their regrets, their hopes for the future, and Derek was betraying him with every passing day. The day everything fell apart started like any other. Derek was in the cafeteria, eating lunch with Hector and a few other inmates. Tony was at another table, holding court with his top lieutenants. The guards were spread thin. Budget cuts had reduced staffing levels to dangerously low numbers. Then Officer James Cooper made a mistake. Cooper was a rookie, 23 years old, on the job for 6 weeks. He'd been warned repeatedly to never turn his back on inmates, to never let his guard down. But he was young and overconfident. He was escorting an inmate back from a disciplinary meeting when Ramon Flaco Jimenez made his move. One moment, Cooper was walking. The next, Flaco had him in a chokehold, a shank pressed to his throat. "Nobody move," Flaco screamed. "Nobody fucking move, or I'll kill him." The cafeteria exploded. Inmates jumped to their feet. Guards rushed toward the commotion. And in the chaos, someone yelled, "Now, take them all." What happened next was a riot. Inmates attacked guards throughout the cafeteria. Years of resentment, anger, and violence erupted in a wave of chaos. Tables were overturned to create barricades. Windows were smashed. Fires were started. Derek found himself swept up in the current, trying to get to safety, trying to maintain his cover while also looking for a way to help the outnumbered guards. He saw Officer Cooper go down, beaten by multiple inmates. He saw a female guard dragged into a corner, 3 men closing in on her. He broke character. Derek threw himself at the attackers, pulling them off the guard. "Get back," he shouted. "Leave her alone." One of the inmates, a massive man named Curtis, shoved Derek hard. "What the fuck, Chen? Whose side you on?" "I'm not on anyone's side. But we don't do this. We don't attack women. She's a fucking guard. She's a person." Derek helped the female guard to her feet, positioning himself between her and the attackers. "This isn't what we do." That's when he felt eyes on him. He turned to see Hector staring at him from across the cafeteria, confusion and something else, suspicion, in his eyes. The riot continued for 20 more minutes before reinforcements arrived. Tactical teams flooded the cafeteria, using tear gas and batons to restore order. Inmates were forced to the ground, zip-tied, dragged away to segregation. Derek was cuffed with everyone else, his lungs burning from tear gas, his body bruised from the chaos. As they hauled him away, he caught one last look at Hector. His cellmate's face was cold, calculating, suspicious. They were locked down for 3 days. No yard time, no cafeteria, meals delivered to cells, 23 hours a day in those 8x10 boxes, with 1 hour for showers and phone calls. Hector didn't speak to Derek. He just lay on his bunk, reading and rereading letters from Isabella, occasionally glancing at Derek with eyes that held questions Derek couldn't answer. On the 3rd day, Hector finally spoke. "You protected that guard." Derek's blood went cold. "I did what was right. In a riot, you protected a guard, not an inmate, a guard. She was being attacked. I wasn't going to stand there and you called her a person." Hector sat up, his voice quiet but intense. "You said she's a person, like you were reminding them. Thus, like you weren't thinking of her as the enemy." "She's not my enemy, Hector. She's just doing her job." That's what a cop would say. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Derek's training kicked in. Deny, deflect, maintain cover at all costs. "I'm not a cop. I'm doing 7 years for armed robbery. You know this. You've seen my paperwork." "Paperwork can be faked." "Hector, listen to yourself. I've been your cellmate for 3 months. We've talked about our daughters, our lives, everything. You know me." "I thought I did." Hector stood, moving closer. "But then I remembered something. That first week you were here, you asked me about the guard killings. You asked who did it, and I thought it was just curiosity. But what if it wasn't? What if you were gathering information?" Derek's heart pounded. This was it. The moment his cover was about to blow. He had seconds to decide. Maintain the lie or call for extraction. If he called for extraction, 8 guards' murders would go unsolved. Tony Valdez would walk free. The smuggling operation would continue. More guards would die. But if he didn't call for extraction, he might not survive the next 24 hours. "Hector," Derek said carefully, "I understand why you're suspicious. After what happened, everyone's paranoid. But I swear to you, on my daughter's life, I'm not a cop. I'm just an inmate who made a mistake and is trying to survive this place without losing his humanity." Hector stared at him for a long moment. Then he said, "Prove it." "How?" "Tonight, they're moving a shipment of phones through C Block. Tony needs someone to create a distraction so the guards are looking the other way. You do it. You prove you're with us. You refuse, and I know you're a rat." Derek's mind raced. Creating a distraction would make him complicit in the smuggling operation. It would solidify his cover but also cross a line into actively participating in crime. FBI protocol was clear. Observe and report, but don't commit crimes in service of the investigation. But if he refused, his cover was blown. And a blown cover meant death. "What kind of distraction?" Derek asked. "Start a fight. Make the guards respond to the wrong location. 5 minutes, that's all we need." Derek nodded slowly. "I'll do it." Hector's face softened slightly. "I'm sorry, brother, but I had to know." That night, Derek started a fight with another inmate in the yard. A staged altercation that looked real enough to draw guard attention. While security responded to the emergency, Tony's crew moved their contraband through C Block unchallenged. Derek had just actively participated in a federal crime. He told himself it was necessary, that the ends justified the means, that solving 8 murders was worth this compromise. But in the dark of his cell that night, listening to Hector's steady breathing, Derek wondered if he'd crossed a line he could never uncross. 2 weeks later, Derek was ready to make his final report. He had names, dates, evidence of conspiracy, murder, and racketeering. He had enough to bring down Tony Valdez and 15 other inmates, plus 3 corrupt guards. It was the most significant case against prison gang activity in Bureau history. He just needed one more piece. Proof that Tony had ordered the guard killings. Everything else was circumstantial. But if Derek could get Tony on record, admitting to ordering even one murder, the case was solid. He'd arranged to meet Tony in the library during free period. The plan was to wear a wire, a microscopic recording device the FBI had smuggled in during a staged medical transfer, and get Tony talking about Sarah Martinez. Derek checked the wire 3 times. It was hidden in the spine of a book he carried, nearly undetectable. As long as no one searched him, he was safe. He arrived at the library to find Tony waiting, along with 3 of his lieutenants, and Hector. Derek's stomach dropped. "Derek," Tony said, smiling. "Come sit, we need to talk." Derek sat, trying to appear calm. "What's going on?" "I've been hearing things," Tony said. "Rumors, questions about your loyalty." "From who? Does it matter?" Tony leaned forward. You've been asking a lot of questions about the guards, about security, about things that maybe aren't your business. You asked me to gather information. That's what I've been doing. True. But see, I'm a careful man. I've survived 28 years in the system because I don't take chances, and something about you doesn't feel right. Hector spoke for the first time. Show them your tattoos. Derek froze. What? Your tattoos? Every convict has them. Prison ink, street ink, something. But you don't have any. In 3 months, I've never seen a single tattoo on your body. Why is that? Because FBI agents don't have gang tattoos. Because Derek had never been in a real prison before this assignment. Because his cover identity had overlooked this crucial detail. I don't like needles, Derek said weakly. Bullshit, Tony said. You know what I think? I think you're a cop. I think the FBI sent you in here to gather evidence. I think everything about Derek Chen is a lie. Derek's hand moved instinctively toward the panic button sewn into his waistband, the emergency signal that would trigger immediate extraction. But before he could reach it, 2 of Tony's men grabbed his arms. Search him, Tony ordered. They found the wire in 30 seconds. Tony held it up, his face twisted with rage. FBI, I knew it. Tony, listen. Derek started, but a fist connected with his face, snapping his head back. They dragged him out of the library, through corridors, into a maintenance area where no cameras operated. This was it. This was where Derek Chen was going to die. Tony pulled out a shank, a long, sharp piece of metal wrapped in electrical tape for a handle. You know what we do to rats in here? Derek's training evaporated. He was just a man about to be murdered, his life about to end in a prison maintenance room, his body probably never to be found. Please, he whispered, please don't do this. You came into our home, Tony hissed. You pretended to be one of us. You lied to us, to Hector. You made him trust you. You made him think you were his friend. And all along you were gathering evidence to destroy us. I was doing my job. Your job was to send us to our deaths. Every piece of information you gathered, every conversation you recorded, it's all going to be used to give us life sentences, death penalties, decades in supermax facilities. And you want mercy? Tony raised the shank. Then Hector stepped forward. Wait. Everyone froze. Hector looked at Derek and his eyes were filled with hurt. Why? Why did you lie to me? I trusted you. I told you about Isabella. I told you things I've never told anyone. Was any of it real? Derek's eyes filled with tears. The friendship was real. Everything I felt was real. I wasn't lying about that. But you were lying about everything else. Yes. And you were going to send me to prison for the rest of my life. You're already in prison, Hector. I wasn't investigating you. I was investigating the guard murders, Tony and his crew. You were never a target, but you would have testified against me if you had to. Derek couldn't lie anymore. Yes, I would have. Hector's face crumpled. He looked at Tony, then back at Derek. Give us a minute, alone. Tony hesitated. Hector? Please, 1 minute. He was my cellmate, my friend. I need 1 minute. Tony nodded reluctantly, and he and his men stepped back, though they kept watch by the door. Hector and Derek stood facing each other in the dim light of the maintenance room. My daughter, Hector said quietly. Isabella, you really have a niece? Yes. Everything I told you about her was true. I told those stories as if she were my daughter. And your name? Is Derek Chen even real? It's real. That part was true. But you're not a criminal. No, you're FBI. Yes. Hector closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were wet. I loved you like a brother. You know that? In here where trust is impossible, I trusted you. I told you my secrets, my fears, my dreams. I showed you who I really was, and it was all a lie. The friendship wasn't a lie, Derek said desperately. Hector, I care about you. I genuinely do. Getting to know you, seeing who you really are beyond your crimes, it changed me. You're not just a criminal to me. You're a person, a father, a friend. A friend who was going to destroy my life. I was trying to catch murderers. 8 guards are dead. 8 people with families, with children, with lives. Someone had to stop it. And you think that justifies the betrayal? Derek had no answer. Hector wiped his eyes. If I let Tony kill you, it would be justice. In here, in our world, what you did deserves death. I know, but you saved that female guard during the riot. When everyone else was attacking, you protected her. That wasn't your cover. That was who you really are. Derek nodded. And you never tried to hurt me. Never tried to frame me. Even though you were lying about everything else, you never used our friendship to destroy me specifically. I wouldn't have. I couldn't have. You're a good man who made bad choices. But you're still good. I saw that. Hector was silent for a long moment. Then he said, I'm going to give you a chance. 1 chance. I'm going to walk you out of here and tell Tony that I've confirmed you're not a cop, that I found your wire by accident and you were planting it to catch someone else. It's a weak story, but it might buy you enough time to trigger whatever emergency extraction you have." Derek stared at him. "Why? Why would you save me?" "Because you saved that guard. Because in all the time we were cellmates, you treated me like a human being. Because even though you lied about everything else, I don't think you lied about caring." Hector's voice broke. "And because if I let them kill you, I become the monster this place wants me to be, and I'm tired of being a monster." He grabbed Derek's arm and led him toward the door. Tony and his men tensed. "He's clean," Hector said. "The wire was planted on him. He's been set up." Tony didn't believe it. Derek could see it in his eyes, but Hector was respected and his word carried weight. "Get him out of my sight," Tony said. "And Hector, if you're wrong about this, it's on you too." Hector walked Derek back through the corridors toward the yard. When they reached a blind spot in the camera coverage, he stopped. "Your panic button. Trigger it now. Get out of here before Tony changes his mind." Derek pressed the button sewn into his waistband. 3 short pulses. The extraction signal. "Hector, don't say anything. Just go. And when you testify, when you send Tony and his crew away, remember that I saved your life. Remember that I chose humanity over revenge. Remember that even in here, even in this hell, some of us are still trying to be good." Tears streamed down Derek's face. "I'll remember. I promise. And Derek, don't ever come back. Don't ever pretend to be one of us again, because next time I won't save you." Within 10 minutes, a medical emergency was called. Derek was escorted to the infirmary, then to a waiting ambulance. By the time Tony realized what had happened, Special Agent Derek Chen was gone. 6 months later, Derek sat in a federal courthouse, testifying against Antonio Valdez and 14 co-conspirators. His testimony, combined with the evidence he'd gathered, resulted in convictions on all counts. Tony received life without parole. The smuggling ring was dismantled. The guard murders were solved. It should have felt like victory. But as Derek gave his testimony, he kept thinking about Hector Ramirez, the man who'd saved his life, the man who'd chosen mercy over justice, the man who'd been betrayed by someone he'd trusted. After the trial, Derek requested a meeting with Hector. It was denied. Hector had been transferred to another facility, placed in protective custody after word spread that he'd helped a cop escape. His life in prison would be harder now. Lonelier. More dangerous. Derek had destroyed that too. He returned to his job at the FBI, received commendations for his work, was promoted, but the case haunted him. The lies he'd told, the friendship he'd betrayed, the man who'd shown him more humanity than he'd deserved. One night, Derek sat at his computer and wrote a letter. "Hector, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't know if they'll even let it reach you. But I need you to know that what happened in Blackwater changed me. You changed me. When I went in, I saw inmates as criminals, as others, as people separate from myself. But you showed me that we're all just human beings trying to survive, trying to find meaning, trying to hold on to whatever goodness we have left. You taught me that redemption is possible, that even in the darkest places people can choose mercy over vengeance. I'm sorry I betrayed you. I'm sorry I lied. But I'm grateful for the time we shared, for the friendship that was real even when everything else was false. You saved my life. But more than that, you saved my soul. I'll never forget you, brother. I'll never forget what you taught me. And I'll spend the rest of my career trying to be worthy of the mercy you showed me. Thank you. For everything. Derek." He mailed the letter to Hector's new facility, not knowing if it would ever arrive, not knowing if Hector would read it or tear it up unread. 3 weeks later, he received a response. Just 2 sentences, written in Hector's careful handwriting. "Tell Isabella I tried to be good. Tell her I chose mercy." Derek kept that letter in his desk drawer. A reminder of the man who taught him that humanity exists even in the darkest corners of the world. That choosing mercy over revenge, forgiveness over hate, is always possible, even when it costs everything. And that sometimes the line between good and evil isn't as clear as we'd like to believe. Thank you for reading this intense story from Behind Bars Tales. If this story of impossible choices and unexpected humanity moved you, please subscribe to our channel for more true stories from inside America's prison system. Hit that subscribe button and notification bell for more powerful stories about redemption, survival, and the complex reality of life behind bars. Because the truth is never simple, and sometimes the most profound lessons come from the most unexpected teachers.